How's it going, everybody? This is Derek with Team Evolution, Russia by Ikorr, and today I am coming to you with a deck profile of the deck that I played at the remote regional and ultimately won the regional with. So I'm pretty excited to go over this deck with you guys. That way you can kind of get a more crystal clear look at Snake, Kukukhlan. It's my favorite avatar in the game right now for sure. And it's definitely going to be moving into set 2, but we'll get into more of that. Really quick, before I kind of get this deck profile going, I want to say a few things. First off, I appreciate every single one of you that watched my videos. It was kind of funny. Every single person that I played at the regional recognized me because of my mat, which is awesome. Definitely didn't intend that because no one has seen my face yet, but it was just kind of cool that people out there obviously watching the videos, which is great. Small community right now, but you guys are all awesome. Secondly, I appreciate kind of the wait for some of this because this week's obviously been busy with Thanksgiving, so I haven't had a lot of time to kind of get all the videos together that I wanted to do. But this is the one I wanted to start with. I do want to go over my teammates deck as well. He got 3rd at the regional with Sasano. I do also want to go over just the regional as a whole and just kind of talk about all the decks that were played and kind of the experience with it and, you know, where hopefully these events go in the future. And then obviously set 2 is just on the horizon. So we're at the end of set 1 decks. We're at the end of kind of what to expect with set 1. Set 2 is going to open a whole nother thing with new avatars, new decks, new support, which is going to be crazy. And so we're obviously going to be getting into that and start diving into set 2. Set 3 doesn't come out until April or May of next year, so we're going to have a pretty long window, 5 months, 6 months maybe of set 2. So it's going to be a lot to dive into and a kind of a long meta with that. But we'll get into that more obviously in future videos. So is this your first time coming across my channel, coming across this, whatever, I appreciate a like and a subscribe. Just let me know what you think about the game, how's it going. Yeah, kind of after all that, my quick little intro, let's kind of get into the deck profile itself. So starting off, one thing I want to say with the regional is that it wasn't very big, mostly because it was remote. I'm not going to get into all that, but it was still fun. It was really cool. All 3 people I played were awesome. My matches were Minos, which I have a lot more respect for after playing against that deck. I definitely learned some things about that avatar while playing it, and the guy that played it was really cool. So thank you for the great match on that. But that's a deck that I definitely can see in the future being more of a menace than I realized it already was. Very grindy game, made my way through that one. My round 2, I played Hunhunapu, which was another actually pretty grindy game. I had to fight my way through that one, but it worked out. And then my last match of the day was Zeus, which I actually thought was gonna be a lot harder because I wasn't sure what type of build I was going up against in terms of Zeus, but this deck ended up performing immaculately in that particular matchup. Out of the 3 rounds, it was best 2 out of 3. I played 5 games in total. There was one game that just took way too long. My round 1, we started time in the beginning of set 2, and it just kind of ended there. Since I had a 1-up game, I won the match off that. But yeah, out of 5 games in total, I didn't drop a single game. So I basically went undefeated all 3 rounds the whole day, which was great. The deck did exactly what I wanted it to do. There definitely are some things that I'll talk about going through the profile that I've already kind of changed. Just because I realized there's some cards and some things that I wasn't sure about that I now know weren't super necessary for the deck. But we'll go into the profile more on that. So I just wanted to say that about the regional. It was great, it was fun. The deck did exactly what I wanted it to do. I will say with the regional itself, I believe there were 3 Zeus decks, 2 Hunhunapu decks, my deck, a Sasano deck, and then the Minos deck. So those were the 8 decks that were there, or that played in it. So yeah, it just kind of worked out. So getting into the deck profile itself, now that I've gone through that whole little thing. The reason why I wanted to stick with this deck and play this deck is because this deck has the ability to handle the early game, and once you get to the late game, it is super hard to beat, and it's super hard to out-resource. Doesn't mean it's invincible. There definitely are ways to beat this deck, but the late game grind is just so suffocating in most instances, which is exactly what happened against all the decks that I played, okay? So Snake as an avatar, we weren't really using his rush ability. Let me point that out. I used it one time thinking it was gonna actually matter, and it really didn't matter. Other than that, you almost never use the rush ability. The recycle ability is kind of where it's at. It just allows you to keep things moving, but obviously being able to play yellow and black together is where it's at. Black has a lot of really powerful cards to summon out of the grave, and yellow has a lot of ways to not only put them in the grave, but also to just give us that rebirth, which is kind of what we're looking for. So the way I'll do this, I'm actually going to go over it into each color separation. Funny enough, I didn't realize that the deck is actually 20 yellow cards and 20 black cards. Now again, the deck that I played at the regional, there's 2 cards that were in here that I actually ultimately took out, but I'll explain what those are at the end of the profile. Oh, not at the end, but when I get to that point. So we're going to start off with the yellow part. So if you're looking at playing this deck, or you want to try this deck or try something new, I mean, this is kind of the way to do it. And again, set 2 has so many great things for this deck planned. I mean, we'll get into that in another video, but so to start things off, we played obviously 2 Stargazer with Foresight. By the way, I just want to say this, if somebody out there has another Fracture Foil Stargazer, please hit me up. That's all I gotta say. Anyways, so Stargazer with Foresight, kind of a staple for yellow, right? The only thing is in this deck, we don't ever really use Stargazer early in the game to fire off cheaper cards, maybe on turn 3 or turn 2 to play a 3-drop, but for the most part, we're saving this for the rebirth cards and things like that in the mid game. But kind of a staple for yellow, so not really much else to explain there. And then we have 2 Asps. Now one I did have a reanimate on. I wish I had a second reanimate, but I don't. The second I played Eye of Ra, which was fine. I think I used it maybe once, but reanimate Asp, especially in this deck, is very powerful. So if I can get my hands on another reanimate, I definitely would do that. Of course, we don't know all the second infusions, all the infusions that are coming out in set 2, so we'll see how that goes. But for now, if you can, reanimate Asps are really big. If you don't have Eye of Ra and you don't have reanimate, you can play, I forgot what it's called, but it's the one that gives it quick strike, which can be pretty good. You can get really flexible with this card, but of course reanimate is, if you have them, kind of the better way to play it. And then I played 2 Scheming Viziers with the Curious Relic. So the purpose of this was that I can draw 3 cards, put 2 cards from my hand on top of my deck, and then its other summon ability triggers, which lets me basically mill the top card that I just put. So this combination is a hand fixer, is what we're doing, because obviously there are cards in this deck that you will draw that you don't want in your hand, that you want in the grave. So this is a very efficient way to do that. You get to draw 3 cards, kind of decide what you don't need in your hand, put them back on top of the deck, and then just mill one of the cards from the top of your deck. Most of the time it works out. Sometimes maybe you're going to look at your opponent's deck, but that's kind of what we used this card for. And then we played, for the Fabled, we played 1 Toth. You could arguably play 2 in this deck, but I think 1 is fine. We played 1 Anubis. This card is fantastic against the graveyard decks, including the mirror match. I will say this card is probably one of the few cards in the game that can absolutely obliterate this deck at a certain point. It didn't come across it at all today, thankfully, but it's something that, you know, if this deck is kind of something that people play in the future, and you know, or you want to counter this deck, and you play yellow, put a copy of Anubis in your deck. And then 1 Sha'ak. This card is generally just a free body, but that's what makes it really powerful, is it's usually a 0-cost 4/6 that rage for 3, and then you just get this on top of whatever else you play. So these are all just fine, good cards. And then we played 1 Chichen Itza. This card was probably one of the MVP cards of the entire day. This card was insane. I played it almost probably every single game, and just getting the ability to freely recycle a card every single turn, and draw a card for that matter, is so powerful. It's so good. This card might just actually be the best location in the game currently. And then I played 1 Royal Necropolis, which I only got it out once, and it kind of made a difference, but I definitely, in the future, let me just say this, the new Shibolba location that's coming out in set 2, that's the black, basically the black pyramid. It puts Ikorr, stores Ikorr on it when something's summoned from the grave or the void. This is coming out for that. Don't get me wrong, this is good. Giving everything reanimate can be good. I only used it once. It's still fine right now, but once set 2 comes out, this card is kind of, you know, yay or nay. But Chichen Itza was fine, and this card right now is fine. And then for the spells, we played 2 Oracular Visions. That's pretty standard. 2 Burnt Incense Ritual, also pretty good. This card is like, I recycle this card constantly. Just helps you get stuff out of the grave and pay cheaper, or to use it cheaper, and yeah, just ends up being a great card. And then 1 Great End. I never actually played the card at all the entire weekend. I just didn't really get to a point where I needed to play it, but having this on top of everything else, especially when you can recycle, it's very strong. So yeah, pretty good. And then I played 2 Curse and 2 Osiris. Now, one thing I want to point out, I was actually playing 42 cards. And the other 2 cards that I played were 2 Vision Serpent, the 4-drop, that stuns it and then voids it at the end of the turn. I took those out of the deck. They were in my list for the event, but I never played the card once. Every single time I had the opportunity to play it, I decided not to, because the aspect of having the card that, like, okay, the big bosses that I summon out of the grave, there were situations where I could have played Vision Serpent, but if I would have had them voided, it would have messed up the rest of the game, if that makes sense. Never played it. I didn't realize how actually kind of bad that card is and how useless that card is until the event itself. So I don't think you need it. Once you get these in the grave or in your hand, you can get into a position where you're recycling them over and over and over with Chichen Itza or with your avatar power, and you don't really need the Vision Serpent. So these are totally fine. Don't need them. But that's the only difference, is the Chichen Itza, or the Chichen Itza, the Vision Serpents were in the list for the event to make a 42 card deck. I trimmed them to make this a 40 card deck, and it was a pretty easy trim. So that's it for all of the yellow cards. Pretty straightforward, nothing overly fancy, pretty easy. Now the black part of the deck is where it gets fun and interesting. This is where we have all our reanimates and stuff. So first we have Toad. And let me just say that Toad is so good for the mill strategy. So we stuck the Favorite of Osiris on this one. Now, here's one thing I want to point out. Because with Toad, I see that most people put either Ikorr on it to give it Swift, or they put the card that gives it Experience, that gives it +1 Raid, right? Which are both good cards, or good infusions. In this deck, though, because I needed to get stuff in the graveyard without playing Desiccate and without overextending on playing 2 Toads, this is the best way to do it. You have to think with infusions. Whatever you stick your infusion onto, that's the cost of that infusion, right? So like, for instance, if I played Curious Relic, if I played Favorite of Osiris on a Swift Messenger, I'm paying 3 to mill 3 cards, right? In this case, I'm paying 1 to mill 3 cards, and then when it dies and comes back, I'm basically milling 3 more cards for 0 because of the reanimate. So this card effectively becomes a 1 cost mill 6. And if you get it off twice in a game, you're paying 4 to mill 12, which is really good. So it's a very under-costed ability to mill a lot of cards. Set 2 gives us that 1-drop spell that lets us just put a champion from our deck into the grave, which is insane. But for now, this is how I utilized it, which I think for this style of deck was fantastic. So this card was great. Even though you're not raiding with it and stuff like that, it's fine. You're just using this to mill, which is exactly what you want. It's super cheap, it's super efficient, and it was the best way to use it. And then we have 2 Deer Wahis with Hamayumi. I wasn't the only one playing this combination. And yeah, this is just a really efficient way to utilize this card. A 2/3/2 that deals 1 damage and then 1 damage again, and then potentially gets another 3 damage in. So this could be a 2 cost, deal 5 damage, is huge. So just a great cheap reanimate option. I played 1 Jaguar Wahi. I'll be honest, I hated it. I think I summoned it once and I don't even think it mattered. This was kind of just more like a flex spot when I was down to the wire. I felt like I needed another reanimate. It has fine weapon on it. It was fine. If you like this card and you want to play it, you can, but for me, it wasn't that useful. And then 2 Vultures. This card is so good. I have Hermes Lyre on 1, and I have Infiltration on the other to just bounce any locations if I came across them. But this is just a good mid-range card, right? It's a 5/4/4 that raids for 2. It blows up a card in your hand, which usually is a positive because it lets you get something out of your hand that you don't want, or it can trigger a reanimate in your hand. And then on top of that, it comes back because it itself has reanimate. Now, what's really cool is if you do find yourself in a position where you play this and you don't have any champions in your hand, then you get to add something from your graveyard back, which is big. So this card is actually really vital to the deck and is very, very important. I played 1 Fierce Alex with the Kusurugi. So it is a 1/1/1 with Swift and will stun something and draw cards. So this was great. This actually helped me out in a couple games where it's a very cheap way to just stun something, draw a card. I can, you know, recycle it. If I draw it again, it's a 1-cost stun and draw a card. It's fantastic. It's great. 1 Ritual Practitioner with the headdress. This was good. This will probably go to 2 with set 2 and all that, but we'll get into that another time. But this card was fine. I played Ahu's headdress on this. There actually was a moment in the Minos matchup where he got me on this really cool lock that I didn't even really know about with Achilles, where basically you play Minos' ability, drops Achilles, snipes something out of your hand, and then attacks something else, but instead of dying, it just goes back to your hand. So you can basically just keep chipping away at your opponent's stuff with Achilles, which in that moment was really hard because I didn't know how I was going to get around that because I needed this to go off. So I was able to recycle this, redraw it, and what I did is I played it, and I had Mayans on the board so he couldn't attack it with the Achilles, and it was really nice, and he had no other way to out it. So I think I ultimately won that same turn I did that, but yeah, it actually worked out, kind of a small thing. We'll see what other infusions we can get to put on this in set 2, but for now, this is like a fine way to do it. If you need to just put something on board, let it sit there if you have a Mayan. Then we have 2 Wahi Watchers. I have no idea where my other Mystic Ankh is right now, but obviously this is supposed to have a Mystic Ankh. These both have a Mystic Ankh. It's a 3/1/6 that raids for 2, and when it secures something, you get to add something from your void back. Super broken. Card is a magnet for removal once it's on the board, because if your opponent knows that you have anything voided, the last thing they want you to do is get pluses off of this. So this card is crazy, especially with the 6 stat line with Mystic Ankh. 2 Wandering Tengus with the Roaring Aegis. So this card was, I don't know, this card I'll probably take out in set 2. It was fine. It can be an annoying little card, but it's definitely not that game breaking a lot of the times. Like, the idea is it just floats and is kind of annoying in the early game, right? Because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to just like play the early game enough to where we can get it to the late game. And this kind of helps us do that because you can play this, shuffle something back, draw a card. It dies, you get the second one out, and then if you can find a way to just like keep recycling them over and over and over to where they're just always floating, your opponent gets to a point where they have to use extra resources to kill both of them in the same turn, so you can't keep doing that, even though you can still recycle them later down the line. Once this hits the board on turn 3, nets you a draw, usually, and then it dies and the other one comes out. Like it's kind of like a 3-cost 6/6, sometimes a 3-cost 9/9, sometimes a 3-cost 12/12, depending on how you look at it, if your opponent just can't get rid of both of them. So they're fine. They weren't overly broken. They were fine. But I will say they didn't really mesh too well with the way the deck is. And this is kind of a perfect example of like the infusion cost aspect of what I just kind of explained, right? Like I'm paying 3 to make my 2-cost avatar power cost 0, right? So the way to look at that is it's almost like I'm using my avatar ability for 2 and I'm just getting a 3/3 body with it, which is still fine, right? If I pay 2 and I get a 3/3 body and shuffle a card into my graveyard and then draw a card, that's fine. But with Roaring Aegis on this, I'm doing that for 3, which again is like fine. So Roaring Aegis is probably one of those infusions you would rather have on a card that is cheaper than your avatar ability, so like a 1-cost, but this was fine. I didn't really know what else to do with it, and I just kind of was playing around with it, but it's probably something I wouldn't do again, but it was fine. Then we played 2 Young Minotaur with Ikorr. This was just a really cheap, efficient way to deal with early threats. It gave this deck more room in the early game. You know, you're paying 3 to deal 4 damage to something, which against like Hunahpu decks was really good. Against like cows, it was really good. It's just good. Flexible, but good. And then I played 1 Enraged Minotaur with Waz Scepter. Last minute inclusion in case I came across any other location decks. I wanted something else to deal with locations. The Waz Scepter prevents something that has 5 or less attack from attacking it, which actually mattered in one particular instance against the Hunahpu deck. But I will say this, if I had a Jade Funerary Mask, it would be on this, because if I can play this, pop a location, kill something, and then it dies and I get something out of my graveyard with the Funerary Mask, that's like a +2 all day. +3 in some, yeah, +2 in some cases. So +3 in some cases, I guess. I'm trying to overthink it. But yeah, that was kind of my thought process. But it was fine. It came up a couple times. I need Jade Funerary Masks. That would be the card that I would put on this for sure. And then last, we have the 4 cards that ultimately made this deck what it was. These 4 right here. These cards are broken. Well, this one's okay. These 3, on the other hand, pretty good. It's basically how you win your games, is you want to get these in your grave and just continuously bring them out. And that's what you do. And it's really difficult when you have an avatar and a location that can constantly recycle your rebirth cards to just constantly bring these back, right? So it's like, hey, we're going to play this, we're going to blow up your board. Your opponent has to deal with it, but then they know you probably have another reborn card to just re-kill the board. Same thing with this, right? I'm just going to stun everything over and over and over. Same with this. I'm just going to stun everything over and over and over. This came up one time and it didn't even really matter. So this one's kind of like whatever. I'd still play it just because it's got reanimate. It raids for 4. Like, it can be a good card. Sometimes you might just play this, pop something, and just get 4 Ikorr out of it. But yeah, these 3 were nuts. Sometimes this was actually better than this because it is not a demon. It seems like Hamayumi is a pretty common infusion, so this being a demon is more susceptible to just getting Hamayumi'd. This is not. It's a demon, or it's a dragon yokai, and it's an 8/8. So if your opponent has no way to just outright kill it, you know, they have to figure out a way to deal 8 damage to it, which is huge. So this actually, I think I came up a lot more than this, even though this was also just as good. And Yum Simmel, here's the thing. I said this in one of my other videos. If you don't have a Yum Simmel, this deck is not as good, or it's harder to play just because it's board wipes, but you have Great Ends if you want to play Great Ends, which kind of does the same thing. You could play the Amit, which if you're up against a wide board can still kind of like, you know, alleviate the board a little bit, can kind of work. But I know this card's difficult to get. If you can get one, great. If not, you can probably still just, you know, get by with these and this, but this card was great. It's insane. Probably the reason that I did win a couple of my games, because being like, okay, you can only stun so much. Let me say it that way. I'm kind of moving quickly in my head, but these can only stun the board so much until you can actually deal with the board, right? Now, one way that I won one of my last games was I was already at 6 Ikorr, and he ended up filling up his whole board. And so I pulled this out instead of this. And because he was at 6 already, 6 champions on the board, this stunned everything, and he had no way to deal with it. He had no way to remove it. He had no way to remove anything off his board. He had no way to do anything. So that was just an instance where it mattered. So you kind of just pick the right moment on which one of these 3 is best. But yeah, it's the way that you win the game. So that is the black card, so I know that took a little bit going too. So that's it. That is the deck that I played, minus the 2 Vision Serpents that I took out of the deck. Hope you guys enjoyed the deck. I will be honest, and I say this in like kind of a real way, but not so much of a biased way. I kind of think with more playtesting and more data, this deck could be probably the best deck in the format. It deals with aggro decks very well, and it deals with control decks very well. However, there are other control decks that can be a little bit of a tougher matchup if you're not prepared for them. The Minos deck was not exciting to play against. The Susano deck, if any of you played against that, is not exciting to play against. But these control decks, they are tough. And they go the distance 100%. But I do think this one, because of its ability to recycle cards with Chichen Itza and the inherent avatar ability, is kind of what makes this deck so powerful. So if you're out there looking for a fun deck to play that is good and control based, I really recommend this deck. If you don't have a Yum Simmel, it's fine. Just play 2 copies of this so you can get it into the graveyard faster, or play a copy of Amit, which is the 7-drop yellow card that it kind of is like a board wipe in certain scenarios. It's like the little dog looking thing. But that's it. That's the deck. So I appreciate it. Just wanted to go over that with you guys. Again, I got a lot of other videos planned talking about set 2 and just some of the other decks. I'm also going to go over the Susano deck that my teammate played. And yeah, that's about it. So appreciate any comments, likes, opinions, what you think of the deck. Set 2 is just around the corner, so keep watch for videos I'll be posting about set 2 stuff. All right. With that being said, Team Evolution out. Have a good day.